A Week in France. Well, you are watching A Week in France, then, our roundup of the stories dominating French headlines over the past several days. And what a whirlwind week it has been. The French press buzzing about several major stories, the verdicts and the landmark Pellico, Samuel Paty trials, as well as Emmanuel Macron's trip to the overseas territory of Mayotte, which was, of course, fraught with controversy. And we're going to start in Mayotte because Emmanuel Macron's visit there his prolonged visit, arguably increased locals' anger rather than assuage it. The French president extended what was supposed to be a day-long trip to stay overnight through Friday, but he racked up one awkward appearance after another. After already standing accused of neglecting the overseas territory, which is France's poorest, he was then heckled on visits to devastated neighborhoods, residents expressing frustration about the slow pace of aid deliveries. But the images that perhaps grabbed the most attention are arguably those showing a visibly impatient Macron railing against locals for complaining. Take a listen.
Don't start dividing people. If you turn people against each other, we're screwed, because you're happy to be part of France. Because if you weren't part of France, you'd be 10 times more screwed.
Well, this week also brought the highly anticipated verdict in the Pellico case, a case that was notable both in its singularity and perhaps in the commonplace but overlooked crimes that were judged. There wasn't a single acquittal among the 51 men who stood trial. The main defendant, Dominique Pellico, was given the maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, while the 50 others were handed terms of anywhere between 3 and 15 years. Well, the 3-month-long trial saw Gisèle Pellico elevated to feminist hero status, especially over her decision to waive anonymity, as Emerald Maxwell explains.
Greeted with cheers and applause outside the courtroom, as she has been every day since the trial began.
I just hope that her case will help justice to change.
She do it to give strength to all the women who don't have the courage to go on trial, to fight.
Gisèle Pellico has been hailed for her bravery from her first appearance at the courthouse in Avignon. Under French law, she could have asked for the trial to play out behind closed doors. But Gisèle Pellico says that it wasn't bravery, but a will to change society and to raise awareness of the use of drugs to rape women that prompted her to opt for a public trial.
When you're raped, there is shame. And it's not for us to have shame, it's for them.
While discreet in front of the news cameras, Gisèle Pellico has addressed the court 3 times. The 72-year-old grandmother and former logistics manager has said she is totally destroyed by the abuse inflicted on her by what she thought of as her loving husband for a decade, over which time she saw doctors for gynecological problems and what she feared was Alzheimer's from her unexplained blackouts.
I've lost 10 years of my life that I'll never make up for. This scar will never heal.
Addressing her ex-husband in court, she asked the question she may never get to the bottom of.
How could you have betrayed me to this point? Whatever trauma you go through in childhood, there's a point when you choose the way you're going to be in life.
She also condemned the cowardice of the dozens of men accused of raping her at her husband's behest, who claim they didn't realise it was rape.
It's time that the macho, patriarchal society that trivialises rape changes.
The historic trial has made a feminist icon of Gisèle Pellico, sparking demonstrations of solidarity, as well as debate over sexual violence, masculinity, and the critical issue of consent. Many hope, as she does, that it will mark a turning point in France.
Well, an anti-terrorism court in Paris sentenced 8 people to prison terms over their roles in the killing of French teacher Samuel Paty in October of 2020. Accused of contributing to the atmosphere of hate culminating in his brutal murder, they were handed terms ranging from 1 to 16 years in prison. Now, that case, which sent off a wave of deep shock here in France, also sparked another debate about freedom of expression, perhaps the importance of protecting freedom of expression, especially in French classrooms. Well, there was yet another major judicial decision in France this week, marking a defeat for a former president. France's highest court upheld a lower court's decision finding Nicolas Sarkozy guilty of corruption and influence peddling during his presidency. Now, he still vowed to continue the fight, saying that he'll take his appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. But that still won't be the end of his legal troubles. Next January, he'll be going on trial over charges that his 2007 presidential campaign was illegally financed by the late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Antonia Kerrigan and Brian Quinn report.
The highest court in France has ruled, and Nicolas Sarkozy has become the first former president in French history to be sentenced with jail time, in his case to be served on house arrest.
The Court of Cassation upholds the decision of the Court of Appeal, which found a political figure, his lawyer and a magistrate guilty of corruption, influence peddling and breach of professional secrecy. The convictions and sentences handed down are therefore final.
But he's making one last appeal to the European Court of Human Rights.
As I've always done throughout these 12 long years of legal harassment, I will take my responsibilities and face their consequences. I do not intend to complain, but I've not decided to accept the profound injustice that's being done to me.
He and his lawyers argue that the evidence used to condemn him should never have been admissible in a court of law.
It's the first time in France that a person has been found guilty on the sole basis of intercepted communications with their lawyer. So it's obviously a defeat for Nicolas Sarkozy, but also for fundamental freedoms, for the right to a defense.
At the heart of the case, telephone conversations dating back to the end of 2013. At the time, Nicolas Sarkozy was being wiretapped, suspected of taking illegal contributions from Libya for his 2007 presidential campaign. The probe would soon lead investigators closer to home, though. They discovered that the former president was in possession of a secret second phone line, a line he kept for his lawyer and friend, Thierry Herzog. It was through Herzog, also found guilty in 2023, that Sarkozy bribed a senior appeals court magistrate, Gilbert Azibert, forging a so-called corruption pact. Sarkozy was seeking secret information on a separate investigation, this one into potential illegal contributions to his 2007 campaign from L'Oréal heiress Liliane Bettencourt, offering Azibert in exchange to help facilitate a prestigious job posting in Monaco. The former president is prohibited from voting for the next 3 years and will be called in for an appointment in the next 20 days to make arrangements for the ankle bracelet he has been sentenced to wear for a year. The decision comes just weeks before Sarkozy's next major court date on the 6th of January over the aforementioned Libyan campaign contributions.
And we finish then with a festive journey exploring the enchanting Christmas traditions in Aix-en-Provence. The Provence region already has a rich cultural heritage, and for Christmas there are two treasured customs. Among them, handcrafted clay figurines called santons, which bring the story of Christmas to life. Aurore Dupuis tells us more.
They're a Christmas highlight in Provence. Santons are carefully picked.
We're going to take the little hands.
Religion, tradition, craftsmanship, whatever the reason, santons appeal to all generations. What's your favorite santon?
It's Jesus, because he created Christmas.
Santons are made here in Aix-en-Provence. It's a souvenir we can bring back.
We come here every year, and as a tradition, we buy santons.
A tradition that began in the south of France at the end of the 18th century. Originally made with bread dough or paper mache, santons are now made with local red clay. A delicate job, each piece is unique.
Tout se fait à la main.
Everything is made by hand. You can't hold the clay too long in your hands or it would burn from the body heat. It would dry and it wouldn't work well in the mold. When we assemble the parts, we have much more creative freedom. That's what I love about this job, letting our creativity run free.
Characters, animals, santons represent local daily life, old trades, and of course, the Christian nativity.
The word santon comes from the word loup santoun. In Provence, it means little saint. It dates back to the French Revolution, when people were no longer allowed to go to churches to see the nativity scenes displayed there. So they started making little saints at home to pray.
That's when nativity sets started booming in French homes, and santons were commercialized. Today, more than 100 workshops like this one are located in southern France. The Fuchs run a family business, passed on from generation to generation.
Since I was 10 years old, I've been coming to the workshop to help my father make the simpler pieces or just to watch. I'm the 5th generation after my father, who succeeded my grandmother, who herself succeeded Paul Fouque.
Made in France figurines that keep the Christmas spirit spinning.
Well, that's all we have for you for this edition. Stay tuned. I'll be back in under 5 minutes with another roundup of the day's top stories.